near epic level collapse, folks. Wow, it should have never gotten that close. The Fever did everything possible to blow a game, but still come out with the win. That was a Stephanie White waited till the very, very last minute to put Stephanie Hull in on defense. She should have been in there.
The Fever were cruising, Sophie Cunningham was on fire, and Aliyah Boston dominated the boards until it all almost fell apart. With the Storm mounting a shocking comeback, guess whose clutch plays stopped the collapse just in time? This is a rescue you need to see to believe. Sophie Cunningham was making it look easy. In the first half, she torched the Storm with an almost casual confidence, draining three-pointer after three-pointer like she was playing a pickup game. Her shooting was so smooth, it didn't even feel real. 5 out of 6 from the field, 4 out of 5 from deep. Every time it seemed like Seattle might rally, there she was, squaring up and knocking down another dagger. She wasn't just hitting shots, she was silencing the crowd, keeping the Fever in control. And for a moment, Cunningham looked like she might have been the one to run away with this game entirely.
Those turned into a disaster, and it started at the end of the third quarter. Another Stephanie White collapse, 2.5 minutes in on defense. They could not seem to get a big rebound to save their life. Parts of these games, certain halves of these games, it's like they didn't want Sophie Cunningham to touch the ball at all in the second half.
But then came the second half. Or more specifically, what didn't happen in the second half. Cunningham, the same player who lit up the floor just minutes earlier, was barely touching the ball. It wasn't because defenders had suddenly locked her down. No, this was different. You started to wonder, where were the plays drawn up for her? Why wasn't the ball swinging in her direction?
That might have been the only points or one of the only 2 buckets she even shot. They get the win over Seattle. They move into 5th place, okay? They're actually 17-12 now. She even shot in the second half. I think she shot two times in the second half and hit both of them.
The Fever's offense started sputtering, and it left you desperate to know. Was this just poor execution? Or was something bigger holding her back? Let's rewind for a second, though, because what Sophie did in the first half deserves a closer look. Picture this. Cunningham pulls up from beyond the arc, hand in her face, money. Next possession, same story, same result, nothing but net. And she wasn't just taking shots. She was bailing the Fever out of tough situations.
5 of 6 shooting, 4 of 5 from three-point range. And in case you're wondering, she's the only. Kelsey Mitchell was 3 of 16 from the field. The old Kelsey Mitchell miss. The inefficient, poor field goal percentage shooting Kelsey Mitchell returned tonight.
When nobody else could find a rhythm early on, especially from range, she stepped up, hitting contested threes that most players wouldn't even attempt. It was the kind of shooting display that makes you think, just keep feeding her. You saw what could have been. If the Fever had simply leaned into her hot hand, they might have buried the Storm before halftime. Instead, they let them hang around, and Sophie's role slowly began to shrink. Here's a stat that paints the picture perfectly. Other than Cunningham, the Fever couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from downtown. The rest of the team was ice cold, shooting a miserable 29% on threes, while Sophie was up at 80%. That type of discrepancy should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, Sophie Cunningham, she was ready to ball out tonight. Let's take a look right here. She's the only one raining down the threes right there. Boom, knocked it down. And she was hot. That might have been the only points or one of the only 2 buckets she even shot.
She wasn't just the team's best scorer. She was the only consistent one from the perimeter. And yet, as the game wore on, she became less of a factor. It wasn't like she'd suddenly lost her shooting touch. It was just nothing. No meaningful plays run for her. No chances for her to stretch the floor. The ball simply stopped finding her hands. For a player who was so dominant early, she was oddly invisible when the Fever needed her most. Was it a coaching decision? A systems mistake? Whatever the reason, the decision-making here left plenty of fans scratching their heads. And this wasn't just any random mid-season game. It was a battle the team absolutely had to win. And Sophie had proven she was the go-to scorer on the night. In basketball, when someone's cooking that hard, it's often said you ride the wave until it breaks. But for whatever reason, the Fever seemed content to just let that wave fizzle out. You had to wonder how much of that came down to execution versus who was calling the shots from the sideline.
Ari had 9. Chloe Bibby, I don't know what she did to make Stephanie White mad. 7 for 11, 63% from the field, 16 points, 12 boards. The other night, I don't know. They came real close to blowing this game.
What's even wilder is that this happened during a game when the margin for error was razor thin. The Storm clawed their way back in the second half, forcing the Fever into a nail-biter they probably had no business being in. Those missed opportunities to keep Sophie involved? They could have made all the difference. That's what hurt the most, knowing she could have been the one to put the game to bed long before it got tense. And yet, in spite of how things played out, Sophie Cunningham undeniably made her mark. Her first-half performance once again underlined why she's such an important piece for the Fever's future. Give her the ball and she'll punish defenders. Ignore her and you're wasting one of your best weapons. Here's the takeaway everyone's thinking about heading into the next game. The Fever have this incredible shooter, someone who thrives in pressure, but they haven't quite figured out how to optimize her. It's not just about giving her a green light, it's about designing a system that keeps her involved no matter what. If they can tap into that potential fully, imagine the damage Cunningham could do on a nightly basis. But where Sophie needs support is in balancing the load, and that's where Aliyah Boston comes in. The Fever don't just need one star stepping up, they need dual leadership that can stabilize both inside and out. Because while Sophie showed what she can do when she gets hot, Boston proved that even when the going gets tough, you can count on her to anchor the team.
Points. For the second straight game, Aliyah Boston looks like she's waking up a little bit. Was second in the league, far as I was concerned, in the MVP race. And then she fell off a cliff. And she has struggled mightily until the last 2 games. And she's starting to make her way back.
Aliyah Boston didn't just secure rebounds in this game. She secured the Fever's sanity during some of the most chaotic moments. Sitting at 16 points and 12 rebounds, Boston's double-double wasn't just a mark of consistency. It was a statement to everyone who doubted if she'd find her rhythm again. Remember, her recent weeks weren't exactly smooth sailing. After an earlier dip in form, where she seemed to fall off a cliff, as some analysts put it, this was the breakout performance Fever fans had been waiting for. Boston wasn't holding anything back, and every clutch hustle board and shot in the lane told the same story. She's back. Here's why her presence was absolutely critical. Midway through the second half, it felt like everything was slipping away for Indiana. Their outside shots? Not falling. Their offensive flow? Out of sync. In those stretches where nothing was working for the team, Boston became the safe zone.
Near epic level collapse, folks. Wow, it should have never gotten that close. Parts of these games, certain halves of these games, it's like they didn't want Sophie Cunningham to touch the ball at all in the second half. 7 for 11, 63% from the field, 16 points, 12 boards.
When Seattle started clawing back and the game got uncomfortably close, Boston locked down the paint. One moment that stood out was her ripping down a contested rebound, then immediately kicking the break back in motion to squash Seattle's momentum. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it's the kind of play that shifts the feel of the game. And let's be clear, Boston's shots weren't just open layups or garbage time points. When the Fever got sloppy or the clock wound down, she was the one finishing through contact at the rim, keeping the scoreboard alive. 7 makes out of 11 attempts? That's 63% shooting. Efficient, reliable, unshakable. These weren't empty stats. These were the differences between a collapse and survival. You couldn't help but notice her timing, too. Every rebound she snatched, Every second chance opportunity she created came when the team absolutely had to stop the bleeding.
I don't know. Boy, they almost blew it. They almost blew it. I got to tell you. You come out in the second half and you start losing leads, that is a coaching issue. I don't care what sport you're in. Well, it's up to your coach. It's up to your coach to make adjustments against that adjustment.
It felt as if her hands were magnets for the ball during crunch time, and Seattle couldn't do anything to shake her off. But this wasn't just a bounce-back game for Boston personally. It was about reestablishing her role as the emotional leader of this team. Every dive for a loose ball or physical box out sent a message to her team, to the fans, and to Seattle that this wasn't a game she was willing to lose. For context, her 12 rebounds weren't just numbers. They kept Seattle from controlling critical possessions, especially when the Fever's shooting went cold. When the perimeter game dried up and Sophie Cunningham wasn't getting the ball enough to make good on her hot hand, Aliyah became the difference maker inside. Think about this. Boston's performance sets the kind of tone every coach dreams of. You've got a player who, even when things around her start to unravel, doubles down on fundamentals and grinds out impactful plays.
That might have been the only points or one of the only 2 buckets she even shot. They get the win over Seattle. They move into 5th place, okay? They're actually 17-12 now. Points. For the second straight game, Aliyah Boston looks like she's waking up a little bit.
This wasn't just a highlight reel performance. It was gritty. It was calculated, and it got the job done in a high-stakes situation. Boston pulled her team out of danger when they were flirting with throwing this one away. And in doing so, she showed exactly why she's so valuable to Indiana's playoff picture. Now, let's not forget where she came from just weeks ago. Earlier this season, there was a legitimate concern about her struggles after a teammate's injury. Some thought the added pressure had thrown her off, and during those games, she didn't look like the dominant force we'd come to expect. But over the past few outings, there's been a clear shift. The energy, the confidence, and that laser focus on the boards. It's all coming back, and this game feels like the culmination of that turnaround. What we're seeing now is exactly what Indiana needs moving forward if they want to stay competitive. Even with her resurgence, it's hard not to ask, will it be enough to cover for the team's continued second-half struggles? Because while Boston saved them time and time again in this game, there were glaring cracks in the system that even her 12 rebounds couldn't hide. The overdependence on singular heroics, whether it's Sophie's shooting or Aliyah's inside presence, could be a problem.
Parts of these games, certain halves of these games, it's like they didn't want Sophie Cunningham to touch the ball at all in the second half. She's the only one raining down the threes right there. Boom, knocked it down, and she was hot. That might have been the only points or one of the only 2 buckets she even shot.
Playoff teams thrive on balance, and if the Fever want a legitimate shot, they'll need to figure out ways to sustain their leads without relying entirely on individual dominance. But regardless of the team's broader issues, Boston showed that when it comes to keeping them afloat, she's up to the challenge. This wasn't just a single-game resurgence. It was a reminder of what she can bring night in and night out if the Fever continue to lean on her as an anchor. In the end, it wasn't just about the points or the rebounds, though those are impressive enough. It was about her relentless, unshakable determination to push this team over the finish line. That determination, though, is only part of the equation. Because while Boston and Cunningham proved they can guide the ship, the Fever's close call also revealed just how vulnerable they are when coaching decisions start to falter under pressure.
She's the only one raining down the threes right there. Boom, knocked it down, and she was hot. Parts of these games, certain halves of these games, it's like they didn't want Sophie Cunningham to touch the ball at all in the second half.
Sophie Cunningham and Aliyah Boston gave us a glimpse of the Fever's potential, combining clutch shooting and dominance in the paint. But for all their brilliance, it's clear the team struggles when execution and coaching come into question. Almost letting the Storm back into this game showed just how fragile their grip can be when things go wrong. 5th place in the standings looks good on paper. But can the Fever fix their second-half collapses in time for the playoffs? Let me know what you think. Are they real contenders, or do these cracks run too deep? Drop your thoughts below.